So this is the February 18th, sorry, I almost skipped a week. February 18th community meeting for Kubernetes, and the meeting is recorded. Today on the agenda, we have a demonstration of K-Machine by Sebastian. I'm not going to try. I'm sorry, Sebastian. How do you pronounce your last name? Oh, but you're muted.
Yeah, go again.
Okay, I'm going to still not try, but thank you for that. We have an opportunity to talk about a use case. If someone wants to do that, go ahead and pop into the agenda doc and add that. We're going to have a cluster ops sticker tool. And then we also have some updates on the Kubernetes website, the preview of that. Google Summer Code participation is a big one. What do we do about the March 10th meeting? And then the 1.2 and 1.3 releases. So let's get this party started with Sebastian and K-Machine.
Cool, thanks, Sarah. Can you guys hear me?
You can, thanks.
Okay, so my name is pretty easy to remember. You go ask him, go ask him.
Aha, go asking.
I'll share the screen. My first time with Zoom. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And
so, in interest of time, I'll start with a command here on my terminal, and we'll let it run while I show you a few slides. So here I'm typing K-Machine create -d DigitalOcean bar, and we'll let that run. Hopefully it will work. So a few slides. Do you see the slides?
yes.
Okay, so I started Skipbox just a couple of weeks ago, left my previous job, and basically I'm working on Toolbox for Kubernetes and also an application lifecycle solution. Background, I know Rob is there, but I work quite heavily with the Apache Software Foundation. I wrote the Docker cookbook.
There we go. Alberto, I have to keep muting you because you have a lot of background noise.
I wrote the Docker cookbook, which has a Kubernetes chapter with some help from Joe Beda. I wrote that. And Skipbox, we have three main drivers. The first one, which was the first idea that got me started when I was doing Docker and then Kubernetes, was to create a Kubernetes toolbox, very much like the Docker toolbox. The second driver is to create an app store application, because I don't really want to work on the internals of Kubernetes. Lots of people are doing this very well. I really want to focus on the applications. So I'm working on an app store, and in the config sig, we're working with VM and Helm. So we'll have an app store coming up, and then a lifecycle solution, which will be kind of a event-based solution looking at apps in Kubernetes. But today here, we're just talking about the toolbox, and very much the idea was to meet the Docker users where they are. So Docker has, of course, gotten lots of people to use it, and Docker packaged the toolbox, which contains the Docker engine, the Docker machine, Docker Compose, the UI, Kitematic, and I thought, hey, let's do the same thing for Kubernetes, pretty much the same tools, so that people who are familiar with the Docker tools, they can easily start using Kubernetes. So it's meant as an easy on-ramp to Kubernetes. So we took boot to Docker, forked that, and created boot to KDS. So it's VirtualBox ISO image that has a single node Kubernetes deployment. We took Docker machine, forked it. So yeah, I'm sorry, lots of forks, but it's Apache license, so Docker machine forked it and created K-Machine that I'm going to talk about. Docker Compose, we forked libcompose, the Go version of Docker Compose, and created Compose. Kelsey Hightower had written Compose to Cube, It's very similar, but integrated in a Docker Compose full mechanism. And then for the UI, Docker has Kitematic. So we created a small desktop UI based on NW.js, which is our Skipbox UI. Everything is open source, of course. It's on GitHub. Under Skipbox organization, you can find the boot to cadence, the K-machine, the Compose, everything. We got lots of other things on there, like Ansible recipes, Terraform plan, a build on Raspberry Pi that I worked on several months ago. And the App Store is in the works. It's in there right now. Currently, it's Deployment Manager and Helm charts, but it will get better soon. So of course, check them out. I would love to get some feedback. That would be terrific. The UI looks like this. It's desktop based, so it's not meant as a replacement to the dashboard. There's a few nice things like integration with the App Store and ability to use multiple endpoints. Kubernetes endpoints. So K-machine, a fork of DrMachine, as I said, and what I wanted to do was to put the provisioning of Kubernetes inside the code, so you get a single binary and you run it. We could have done it differently with a wrapper on DrMachine. You could do it with Docker Compose. I mean, there are lots of ways to do this, but I thought that using DrMachine was kind of nice. The current release allows you to use Kubernetes 1.1.2. I'm struggling with a few things with service accounts to be able to move the release to like 1.1.4, but hopefully it will be solved in the next releases of Kubernetes, and we'll put that in K-machine. The problem are linked to the Dockerized kubelet, which causes problem with service accounts, which causes problems with DNS support and things like this. But it's almost solved. That's the good news. As I said, it's a single node Kubernetes deployment. It's not meant to be a cluster deployment. So it's really easy setup, single instance, get familiar with Kubernetes. Everything is Docker based. It's really the single node Docker deployment recipe that we have in the documentation. For the VirtualBox support, the kubelet runs actually as an init service. And that's why right now I do have service accounts working properly in VirtualBox. Hopefully we'll fix that so that it will work for all the other cloud providers. Since it's a fork of DrMachine, we inherited all the support for DigitalOcean, AWS, and all the cloud providers. So it just works on the other providers. So that's my contact, SetGoa, Skipbox, at SetGoa. Of course, love to get contribution, feedback, issues, let me know. And quick demo. So here, the command I started at the beginning finished. So it just looks like DrMachine, K-machine create -d DigitalOcean. That's your cloud provider. It returns the command K-machine and foobar. And when you run this, if you're familiar with DrMachine, you get the environmental variable to set up the Docker endpoint. What we added was also some commands to set up the Kubernetes context. So if you exec that, it will set up a new context in your kubecontrol config. And now when you do get nodes, yippee, you have a Kubernetes endpoint on DigitalOcean exactly the same way that you use DrMachine. It's very nice because, of course, you can have multiple endpoints. So I studied a few before. So Amazon EC2 and then VirtualBox. So if I want to switch, I can just do env AWS. That's the other one. That's not super streamlined. There's probably a way to do this a little bit better, but you get the node. It shows up as localhost. We may have to change, except if I list the pods, you'll see that it's AWS. Yeah, they put the name here. So let me switch to the VirtualBox one. Because that's the one that's working quite well. I managed to fix that today, the proper service account. So you end up with you end up with a working Kubernetes endpoint. You can set up the DNS add-on, and also put in the dashboard. So you get your service for the dashboard, and then, of course, you end up, if I find my Chrome, you end up with a dashboard working on your VirtualBox IP here, and you have a fully working Kubernetes dashboard running in your K-machine node. It's quite nice because it's still Docker machine. It's still Docker machine, so you can do SSH, for example, barfoo. And here it looks like it's boot to Docker because that's how we built boot to KS. It's boot to Docker, and it's all Docker based. So if you do Docker PS, you get, of course, all your containers from your DNS and your dashboard, but you also get your controller manager, your API server. Everything is running in containers with the Hypercube image. And once you're done, once you're done, you just RM AWS, kill your machine, and that's it.
That's great fun. Does anybody have any questions? You've all seen this, you've all played with it. It's super awesome. You're going to give lots of feedback and contributions to Sebastian, right?
Yeah. And Compose is even better. Compose is very cool. You take a Docker Compose file, automatically translate it in Kubernetes objects or charts for Helm, or deployments you can pick. And it targets your Kubernetes endpoint automatically. So you do Compose up, and it takes your Docker Compose, and boom, you have your Kubernetes application running.
So Sebastian, long-term, what are your plans for this in terms of maintaining? Are you going to take the fork and develop it independently? Are you going to try and, reapply your patches and sort of update it as DrMachine moves forward? Do you are you just using DrMachine as sort of a starting point with sort of, ideas on where you're going to take it from there?
Yeah, that's a good question. My guess is that if we were to try to send the patches upstream to Docker Machine or Docker Compose, they wouldn't take them. But I'll try. I'll reach out to them, and I'll try to see what they think. Though I doubt that they will take them. So the point is that if the community thinks it's interesting and that we get some type of critical mass, we could keep maintaining it. If it's used and it has some interest. The K-machine, I mean, people know how to create a Kubernetes endpoint. It's easy to get started. I think the Compose is more interesting as a way to move from somebody who has worked his container images, develop a few containers that are linked, and now wants a real application in Kubernetes.
So Sebastian, an alternative to trying to upstream all of this into Docker's tools would be to offer to refactor Docker's code so that you could link in the parts of them that you need without forking. Right? Like if you refactor all the bits that you use into a library that you could link in.
Yeah.
That would be another way to go. Because
there might be a way to refactor.
Yeah, the parts of this that just create VMs in different providers seems like it could be a generally useful library, for example.
Yep. I mean, what I didn't mention is that because it's Docker Machine, if you do Docker PS directly from your desktop, you still have the Docker endpoint properly set up, so you get the benefit of both. And same thing with the Compose that we worked on. You can still use Compose as a pure Docker tool, but you have the option to use the Kubernetes hook in some way. But yeah, I'm open to any feedback to see how, what could be the long-term strategy here in terms of maintainability.
Yeah, pretty cool. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sebastian. If anybody has more questions, we've got Sebastian's email address. You can find him online. I'm sure if you find K-Machine on GitHub, you can send him all sorts of information, suggestions, and contributions that way. Awesome. All right. So next up on our agenda is a use case. So did anybody want to talk about their experiences use of Kubernetes right now? I didn't have anyone scheduled with a particular use case, but if someone has something they'd like to discuss, be it asking for help or just sharing what you're working on for a couple of minutes, that would be fine. If anybody has volunteered, jumped up and down, I either don't have video or don't have audio.
Hi. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Shahid from Hasura.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, this is Shahid from Hasura.
Hello, Sate.
Yeah, so we presented a demo last week, Pangea. Yeah, so we guys were looking at a very specific use case with Kubernetes namespaces. So we were wondering if the community could help us with, we were thinking about network isolation within the namespaces. So namespace 1, can we prevent it from contacting namespace 2? Some kind of network isolation. Is it possible, or is it in the roadmap for the coming versions?
So I can chime in here. This is Casey from Project Calico. The network SIG has been talking about this a lot for the past couple months. And we are currently just trying to tie down a proposal that would allow this. And it'll be kind of in the first stages implemented using API extensions like third-party resources. But yes, you should be able to do this soon.
Okay. Good to know that.
And it might be worth participating in the networking SIG if you're curious about this. There's also, Clayton also says there's an implementation of this from OpenShift SDN that works today as a plugin, but it requires the APIs to manage it.
Okay, we'll surely check it out.
Yep. So it sounds like maybe the networking SIG is a good place to go and spend a bit of time, or at least ask questions with that group. We haven't had an update from them in a while, so maybe we can do an update from the networking SIG next week more broadly.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Yep. And then Clayton works with Red Hat and is available on Slack and such to answer questions if you have further questions about that. I just volunteered you, Clayton. Sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else, or should we jump on to what SIG reporting we have scheduled for today? All right, let's do SIGs. I see cluster ops on the list.
Okay. And I scheduled the kickoff. I wasn't ready to coordinate it earlier in the week, so I scheduled it for Friday as the kickoff meeting. And I sort of, and people are welcome to make other suggestions. I sort of thought of this not quite as a full happy hour meeting, but Friday afternoon. So my thought is to collect stories at the end of the week for my cluster ops. So there's a link to the doc that we're starting. And my goal for the first cluster ops meeting is to start collecting inventory. So deployment scripts, what people are doing, talk about the mission a little bit. And I wanted to reinforce one thing that I'm really trying to accomplish, and I'm hoping people help recruit for, is I'd really like to see cluster ops be a place where operators can collect. In the OpenStack world, we did this ad hoc, and I'd like to be a little bit more controlled, which means pull the operators together, give them a place to compare notes, and actually give them an identity and a voice. So part of the goal for cluster ops is to actually say, all right, if you're running Kubernetes, here's a place where you can share stories. And so I'm not sure how to do this yet, but I want to offer that if somebody has an environment where they don't feel like they can share the details, that environment. It's a corporate environment. They don't have permission to talk about it. We'll figure out some way to anonymize people during a presentation so they can say, all right, I work for Mumble, and we have Mumble servers running Kubernetes, and we'll figure that out if we have to do that. So
making a good space to discuss problems, challenges, and ways to operate so that you can share and yet still maintain confidentiality in some useful way, if not
where people need it, right? To me, 80% of anything like this is getting community together to talk, and then just having good notes so that we can compare items. And then I love that we're doing regular SIG reports, because that way operators, if we find issues in the operator cluster ops, then we can bring it back to the community and flag it as a major item.
As the 3 people have found this problem, and not just a bug, but a way that, something broader than specific bugs.
Correct. Right, where somebody, like if logging is not consistent, that's causing problems, or you get to scale and these things fall over. That's really where it really ends up being discussion first, documentation, and figuring things out as consequences.
So I don't know if Matt Baldwin is on the call. He's been doing a lot of work with Kubernetes meetups, at least specifically in San Francisco, Seattle, and New York. And I think he's also participating in some of the German ones. But he is also very focused on user experiences, user stories, and Kubernetes user feedback and ways to engage that community. So if he isn't part of your outreach, he should be. And
give me the name one more time and I'll make sure I write it.
Sure, Matt Baldwin from Stackpoint Cloud.
Excellent.
Actually, those 3 words could be in any order in his company name. It could be like Stackpoint, or But all 3 of them are in there. But you can find him, and I'm not sure if I don't think he's on the call, or he would have jumped up and said, hey, I'm here, let me speak for myself by now.
We'll absolutely get that. Awesome. And then the other note I would have just on meeting time is that if we might be shifting the meeting time around a little bit to accommodate other time zones.
Right.
Friday afternoon is
rough for everybody short of the Pacific.
It's to me, I'm happy to change it. I just needed to pick something, and there could be a reason nobody picks Friday afternoons for meetings, and there could be people might say, you know what, it's a nice way to end the week. So. Well,
especially if you encourage people bringing their beers to the meeting.
That is part of what I'm hoping to accomplish. It's still early for me, but I'm never mind starting. It's been a long week. Way how problems goes. Right.
The point about time zones is an interesting one for this meeting. So I'm going to now jump into that, because I don't think we have another SIG that is ready to report out, unless somebody wants to quick write their name in the agenda. But this meeting works okay for Europe, dandy for Pacific US, fine for the East Coast US, but terribly for Asia. So one of the things we had discussed was moving at least one a month to a different time slot. Do we have anyone from Asia who has stayed up extraordinarily late to join us today?
Yes.
Oh, hello. So thank you for your stalwart effort to join us.
Yeah. It's midnight here, but yeah, we have stayed up. Okay.
Well, thank you for staying up to join us. Would it be easier if we did this once an afternoon Pacific time, or once a month in an afternoon or late afternoon Pacific time?
Of course, it will be more easier for more of our colleagues also to join the meeting.
Okay. So I will come up with a recommended once a month that we do it at least in a off time zone or an Asia friendly time zone. My team here actually is split across the world, and we alternate our weekly meetings. But let's start with maybe one a month, and we'll try that for a bit and see how that cadence works. But I'll make sure that I publish very clearly that we're doing an Asia-friendly time this week or a Euro-friendly time this week.
Awesome. That will be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Do
All
you have
right.
an idea of like, would that be 5 o'clock Pacific? Is that you're thinking? Just to...
That seems reasonable. 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific seems. Then they'd only have to get up early instead of stay up till midnight.
Yeah, exactly. 5 or 6 Pacific is what? It will be early morning here. Yeah.
Yeah. But 5 or 6 Pacific is then 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern time. So and Europe is 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific is middle of the night for Europe. So we'll just see. We'll try it. Give it a shot and see what sort of engagement we get. But I'll pick a date and I'll put it in the sand and try to get us to do one of them in an Asia-friendly time slot as at least a test.
Okay.
I wouldn't object to moving this regular meeting earlier.
To earlier? No.
If we're praying. But.
Okay. That's another option, although it doesn't get us much earlier than 10 p.m. in India. No, where are you, Shahid?
Yeah, India only.
India.
Yes.
It moves us a little bit out of the lunch hours for the east and central.
Yeah. Okay. We will play with times because it's going to be wrong for somebody no matter what we do.
Correct. Sadly. Damn round planets.
Yes, with shifting time zones and all that. All right, so any other SIGs, or shall we move on to John showing us the Kubernetes.io website preview? Let's go to John then. I saw you on here.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Can you see this?
Yes.
All right.
This is a website with Kubernetes.
This is the website for Kubernetes. You guys I'm seeing like a column with your faces on it on the right. Are you guys seeing that, or is that just Zoom being silly?
We can see you. You're
okay. So this is a work in progress. This is the very first sort of doc complete version of the site. I'm working with a company called United Creations to create the assets for this. But basically, you're looking at what we're thinking the next version of the docs is going to look like. The TOCs are grouped as opposed to one long TOC like we had before, and what's currently up on Kubernetes.io right now. I grouped them into guides, reference, samples, and support. So reference information is stuff like literally all the commands for kube control, etc. Samples are all the various places that we have stashed canonical examples of how to do things in Kubernetes. Support, pretty obvious troubleshooting, reaching out to the community. And but you'll probably spend a lot of time in guides where we explain how to use stuff. Going to reference when you're deep within using a particular API or tool. There's a lot of CSS problems right now because this is all being imported from the old site and stood up with the new design. So bear with me on that. But the creative agency and I are working on that. If I can just scroll through here, like here's the CSS problem, sort of double spacing. This is sort of what it will look like. We have syntax highlighting that colors things nicely. And that's kind of what the site visually feels like right now. There's not any marketing content up outside of the docs. But things get really exciting. Oh, here, I like this tool. I wish this page had better CSS. And that pre-fills out a GitHub issue for us, right? So you can let us know what's going on.
That's awesome.
So right now, this site is available as a pure GitHub Pages repo. We're not really entertaining pull requests right now, but I do want to show how easy the workflow is. So as you'll notice, the repo is named kubernetes.github.io. If I were to fork this to myself, it takes a few seconds, as it promises. And then if I rename it to my username, then instantly I have that same website here once it stands up. So let me start making changes in my fork, so we'll prove that that works.
And this is going to stand as its own repository under the Kubernetes organization, right, going forward?
Absolutely. So that's an important change for everyone to know, is that no longer is the docs repo, or the docs repo, like source of truth, a subfolder in the main Kubernetes repo. So if I add a little note here, hi everyone, to the landing page of docs, then when we get to, shoot, Zoom is like blocking my screen right now, so excuse me, there we go. When we get to this, whenever it's done standing up, sometimes it takes like 30 seconds to build, then basically you see the changes instantly in your fork at this URL, which is pretty awesome. And I can do the same thing. It works the same locally. So while that's thinking, let me go ahead and clone the repo. And basically what I'm trying to do is make it as easy as possible for you guys to help with the docs and contribute to the docs.
Haha, which leads me, while you're cloning, to a point that is, I have gotten permission and budget now to do a doc bounty. So John is going to be your man handing out credits.
Oh, good. I was wondering if we could announce that yet.
Yes, we can announce that it is happening. I won't have the credit stuff until the first week of March, but it is going to happen, and you could even, when you're ready to start taking contributions on this, you can start keeping a little list.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be meeting with the team to figure out what changes to the docs should warrant bounties. Let's see if this is live yet. Okay, it's tripping up on GitHub.io, but it works. Sometimes it takes a while. The very fastest way is to have things locally. So this is my local machine. As you could see, that none of this existed a second ago. I just cloned it and ran Jekyll serve, which is an open source thing. It only takes a few minutes to set up. And here I am on my local machine. It runs exactly like it does live. And if I make a change, it should show up pretty dang instantly. I have a snappy markdown editor called Mou, or M-O-U, however that's pronounced. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dr. Nick. And you see that Jekyll regenerates it in 0.3 seconds. And if I hit reload, it's there. And it looks exactly like it does on the live site. So you guys can instantly sort of stage a whole lot of changes and then send us a pull request. You can also get to that by clicking the, again, I can't see, so I have to move this for a second. Clicking the snazzy button. And when you're on any page, there's a pencil button. And we kind of brief you on how you stage stuff and how do you kind of install Jekyll locally and everything. Then give you a button to go ahead and continue your editing. And this would enable you to stage things on GitHub.io if you want to work that way. Again, as you can see, sometimes it's a little laggy, but you know, it also has the instructions for cloning, running Jekyll locally. At the end of it, it's going to be the same whether you're looking at the live site, looking at your fork on GitHub.io, or looking at your local clone. It's a pure GitHub Pages project. A lot of things we used to do with scripts are now being done by native Jekyll capabilities. For example, the TOCs, which used to be munged in, are actually generated by simple YAML files here. I guess I could let Dreamweaver open that, but that's kind of
Heroic.
yeah. It's gonna beat the punch, so I might as well let it.
So John, there was a note in the chat asking about the content, specifically the API docs, being generated or extracted from the Kubernetes source.
Right. So I'm going to be working with a team. This is how the TOC is laid out, by the way. It's just a YAML file. It used to be a bunch of LIs and ULs that were created from a script. Now all you do is edit this. Getting over to the generated docs, right now I'm punting, but what we'd like to do is, and punting looks like this. Basically link over to the generated docs on GitHub. But what I'd like to do is work with the GitHub team to make it so that when they generate the docs, it pushes to this repo from now on. I think it makes perfect sense for all the documentation to live under one roof and be searchable. But we're not there yet. It will be done. And in that case, we'll want to have a note at the top of the file that says, do not edit this here because the source lives elsewhere. But absolutely the same sort of principle of generated docs. So let me see the chat. Yeah, anything else? I don't see any questions in chat. Yeah, so if you want to be intrepid, you can fork this or clone this and have a look at it now and start getting into the workflow once again. Probably not going to accept your pull request unless it's super benign, but it's going to be much, much simpler. Those who have tried to edit the docs, I'm sorry. I swear I'm making it as easy as possible. Thanks.
Hey, John.
Oh, yeah.
When do you think we'll have a flag day to remove the docs from master?
I'm hoping that we sort of launch the site and announce the bounties at KubeCon. And at that point, we should hopefully have our ducks in a row to do that.
Okay.
Do you, John, have just a flash of the new front page so that we can show that?
You know what? Actually, they did stand that up. If you want to see that, if you go to cube.unitedcreations.xyz, they did stand up the homepage. It's a little huge. I find it good, sort of zoomed out at 75%. That's just the way it looked coming out of their Photoshop. They said they're working on it. Oh, yeah, I'm not getting the graphics right now. Well, yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff. Oh, there it goes. I just needed to refresh. Yeah,
Early days, but we should have something more robust coming.
Right, exactly. It's the United Creations and I are it's pretty much just me and a few people like making this whole site right now. But yeah, early days, and we love comments, feedback if you have them on the doc experience.
And can they find you on the Kubernetes Slack?
Yes, they can. I monitor that. I'm also John D. Mulhausen on GitHub and John Dillon at google.com.
Awesome. All right. Then I will send the next any following questions to you going forward that way. I'm gonna.
Can somebody provide for notes? Can somebody just provide the URL? I don't think I have their URL right in the notes. And,
okay, we'll double check it.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to jump to TJ with the 1.2 release watch and any short 1.3 planning update. And then we will go back to the Google Summer of Code and March 10th meeting, providing we have time.
All right. Sounds good. So for 1.2, as a reminder, the sort of straw man schedule plan that we put up on GitHub maybe 6 weeks ago for the end of milestone stuff is still there. It's under the wiki /release 1.2. That schedule had us branching tomorrow from head into a 1.2 branch, reopening head to allow any features, refactors, major code edits, and then spending the next 2 weeks-ish burning down the final bugs in the 1.2 milestone, and then releasing that second week of March, which is also the KubeCon EU conference. So that aligns nicely. I spent the last couple days kind of looking over the count of bugs we've got, the issues, and in the assorted milestones. It seems like we're a bit high. Probably not a super shock since we slid feature complete out a little bit. So just as an overview, like the V1.2 milestone has 135 issues, and 80 of those are P0 or P1. So that tells me we have at least those 80 things that we know we need to finish off. And then there's another 70 or so bugs in the V1.2 candidate milestone that are sort of pending a triage of people making a call on how important it is, et cetera. That said, there are 36 PRs in the V1.2 milestone, and the submit queue looks to be about 40 items deep. So I think there's a lot of throughput happening this week just on bug fixes. I guess, so the question is, when do we branch? And the trade-off, as always, is if you branch early, you have a lot more cherry picks of the bugs and keeping the two branches in sync. And if you branch late, it's delaying the amount of time where we can open up head to larger features and 1.3 era stuff. So that's basically the trade-off. You know, looking at how things went for 1.0 or 1.1, it sounds like it's probably a little early to branch tomorrow. If we have a triple-digit number of issues we think we need to fix. But that is absolutely up for discussion, see what people think. But I would think we'd want to delay the branch by on the order of a week. But again, that's going to depend on how the bug burn down goes, and it's hard to predict how many thorny issues we'll hit shaking out the last couple weeks of the milestone.
Does anyone have thoughts on pushing branching a week, positive or negative?
Positive, but it kind of seems like maybe a week may not be enough with our current burn down rate. I mean, based on where we were at last week with the V1.2 milestone, it looks like we've added about 60 issues to the milestone and closed out about 20. So
Direction, if I did my math properly.
right. So I'm just trying to figure out what we're going to be doing to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps that's the better discussion rather than trying to pick the date or the criteria for branch. We just know we can't do it now and figure out what we can do to make the bug burn down rate go faster.
So where, do you have any specific places that anyone from the community could help on that?
Yeah, so I mean, we have, everything is in the milestones. So anything in the V1.2 milestone or the V1.2-candidate milestones are things that the project could totally use help on. In general, people keep the assignee field relatively clean. So anything unassigned would definitely be able to help towards pushing the milestone forward. And if something is assigned but hasn't seen movement in, you know, call it a week, that is probably an indication that that person's not actively working on it.
And at that point, it would be
So-
conversation.
Yeah, ping the bug and discuss who it's assigned to and see what the plan is, or if help can be warranted.
Offered. Yep.
So just to clarify the numbers, we have 70 open issues on the 1.2 milestone that are P0 or P1 and are not docs or examples. The docs and examples are going to be done late after we actually build a release candidate because of where we are with the site, and because that's what always happens. People finish the code and then we need to go update the docs. Ideally, the docs will get updated sooner, but that's just not reality. So, you know, that's about a dozen-ish issues per team. We have a bunch of AWS issues. That's definitely an area where we could use more community help. Justin has been working very hard on those, but
And Justin has also started to kick off an AWS SIG if you want to understand more about how that is working and how you can contribute to that. You can reach out.
Yeah, but that's like 10 or 20 of the issues are in AWS, and many of them are unassigned, and there's basically just one member of the community plugging away at those. So that is definitely an area where we would love to have help.
I would love help there. I don't think it's necessarily actually as bad as it looks. I think there are a lot of PRs that will clear a lot of those issues, but all help is welcome.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's true in other areas as well. Like there are a number of these issues are tracking issues that aren't going to close until every last detail is resolved. So a bunch of these are actually mostly done, but they're not yet closed for various reasons. We do have some very large changes that still need to go in, which is another reason to delay the branch. The horizontal pod autoscaling and job are moving to V1, and as part of that, we need to create whole new APIs and API groups for those APIs. So that's a fairly large amount of code that is sort of going in as we speak.
Cool.
I'll just glance through the others, see if anything else really stands out where people could help.
HPA is actually merged. It's already moved to V1. And
Oh, great.
API group.
Great. Yeah. So nothing else really stands out. I mean, like TJ said, look for things that are unassigned or things that don't seem to have activity and ask what you can do to help. Another thing that you can do to help is try out some of the new features. We have lots of new APIs going to beta or V1. If the next time we cut an alpha release, if you could pick that up and try out the APIs, get some real use and feedback, that would help pick out issues sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Any other questions about 1.2 and the path to KubeCon? Sorry, release.
So I guess I didn't actually hear an answer about how long we as a community are comfortable deferring the decision to branch. And it sounds like at the very minimum, we're kind of expecting a lot of people to descend upon issues and ping people asking if that's really important, right? That's the takeaway I heard, not a decision on whether or not.
On when, correct.
Yeah, so are we just saying we're going to make that decision next week after a big old bug sweep, or how are we feeling about that?
So I guess the question I would ask is, are we doing effectively, would you consider that week by week slips? Or if you're saying that, I would just say push it 2 weeks.
We are slipping day by day currently.
Okay. I just don't know community sentiment about that type of communication.
Reality is we don't have a release right now, and we don't have visibility into when we will have a release. Like the code that we have is not fully functional and not complete or correct.
We have a targeted release date, but we don't have a release date defined.
I actually prefer the honesty and transparency of that, as long as you're so I just don't know the where people are going to get upset if dates are moving, or if they I don't have a feel yet.
Likewise, I'm going to say +1 to the transparency. I'm not sure that I have a strong opinion on the rest of it, but acknowledging where we are today and being very open with the community about this is way better than where we were 2 weeks ago.
It would also be, I think, a real shame to push the branch date ahead of when we're really ready in order to have everybody feeling good about some milestone.
Yeah, I think that'll just incur more engineering work and certainly is not worth it.
And definitely, as we get a better sense of where we are, we will try to communicate that as soon as possible. And one thing we hope to do in 1.3 is better engage the community in working together towards 1.3. Right now is very late in the 1.2 milestone for people to jump in to help who haven't been helping all along. Like we do have some members from the community who have been helping with some of the features for some number of weeks. And that has been great. And they're fully up to speed on where things stand and what they can do to help, and they are jumping in to help. But jumping in to help now can be somewhat difficult for some of these things for people who are unfamiliar with the code and the status. But you know, we're trying to put together a coherent picture of where we are across the whole project and all the features. And you know, as we develop a better understanding of that, we will definitely share that with the community.
So is it
the
fair?
one ask I would make as a member of the community is it's been about 16 days since I've seen a 1.2 alpha release get cut. And I'm not sure if that's because there's been some churn going on, but I think having another having another release on the GitHub page sometime soonish would contribute some confidence to velocity here.
That's another area where I would love to figure out how to better engage the community so that the burden of building those releases doesn't entirely fall on us. So I don't know if there's an appropriate SIG that's already discussing that, but that would be great to share that responsibility more broadly.
We don't have anything that looks like a SIG release yet. It might be an interesting thing to bandy about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these kinds of things, you know, are the responsibilities borne by a very small number of people. So depending on whether those people are able to do it, or whether the head is stable or not, can materially impact whether release happens or not. Like in some cases in the past, there's literally only been 1 or 2 people who are able to build a release, and you know, that definitely needs to change if we're going to get releases out more consistently.
Sure. I guess I'm just sort of illustrating that it seems like there used to be relatively weekly releases to give us some kind of cadence about, like, without having built everything, what's the state of 1.2 today?
Yes.
And it gives you a much wider pool of beta testers for sort of release candidate type of stuff. And if we're trying to move towards that phase, it's just unclear to me why we've sort of slowed down on those.
Our planned cadence is every 2 weeks. And so I haven't actually looked at the alpha releases to see how close we've been, but we're trying to get a release out every 2 weeks. And then the goal was to, once we branch, release on that new branch and call it beta, which, you know, in a perfect world would have been tomorrow, although it looks like we'll miss that. And so that's why there hasn't been an alpha this week.
That's exactly the reason why we decided not to cut an alpha release last Monday, was that we believed that we will cut the beta release this Friday, like tomorrow. So.
Yeah.
Can we target having an alpha on Monday or between here and there?
I mean, I'll go.
Yeah, I think so.
That do that.
Okay. Thank you all for the feedback on that. We've got 5 minutes left. Do you want to do 1.3 timeline? Just to update on what we as the Google team want to commit to about 1.3 target features.
Yeah, so yeah, this is just a minor update, but from a week or two ago, we sort of discussed 1.3 planning, and it sounded like people wanted to sort of go off and decide as individuals or as companies how they wanted to contribute and what things they were going to build for 1.3, and then probably come back together in a venue, likely a community meeting, sort of to discuss those things all together. Google internally has been looking at what they want to do for 1.3, and it looks like we would be ready to present sort of our plans for what we're going to contribute to March 3rd. That's a Thursday. That's a community meeting day. So that's sort of an initial spot where we could be able to present our thoughts. And I wanted to see if that aligns with anyone else's timeline, or if, you know, how the community feels.
Would it be, so I have 2 questions out of this. One, do you as community members want to see what Google is likely to commit to before making your choices, or do you want to come in at the same time? Do you need that information?
And this is Dave Voronchik. Just to follow up on what TJ said. This is not, we are not dictating what will be in 1.3 or, this is the exclusively what will be in there, as Clayton already said. Red Hat is going to have some things. These are just the things that we as Google would like to see in the product and that we are assigning people to work on. And thereby we can make some form of, or have some form of certainty or some level of certainty about what will actually appear in 1.3, because we know the people who are going to work on it and are going to be committed. This is not product planning for the entire product. As I said, we very much want this to be a community effort. And if you say, well, somebody in the community says, hey, there's this great feature, I'd like it to be in 1.3, I'm willing to work on it, and the team feels like, hey, that's actually a great direction, we'd love to do it, then so be it. It is in 1.3.
So that's why we want you as companies or individuals to bring this is what we would like to put into 1.3 to then synthesize with the list that Google comes up with to make sure that we have what looks like a well-rounded and possible release plan for 1.3 or feature list for 1.3.
Yeah, I think that will help get people involved early in participating as well. If other people see that some feature is going to be under development, then they can join in that effort earlier rather than later, which is necessary in order for them to be able to contribute effectively. Also to help us plan how much time we have to spend on reviews for different areas, which consumes basically all of my time and a lot of the time of other people on the team as well. So, that is definitely something that we need to plan out. So if you want a feature in 1.3, bringing that to the table earlier will help ensure that someone has the bandwidth to review that change to help you get it in.
So my question about did you, the community, need the Google list first was we're planning to bring it to the community meeting on March 3rd. Is that a day, do you all want to target March 3rd or March 10th to bring your lists, and then we can pull together in some sort of synthesis and have a longer discussion on either the 10th or the 17th? Okay, I'm not getting a bunch of feedback unless Clayton is, nope, Clayton is talking to the group, not intentionally. Okay, so.
I guess my only piece of feedback is that it's going to be tough for some of my team members to focus on what's going in 1.3 until we know for sure what's going in 1.2.
That's a fair point.
So if we're talking about punting 1.2 like 2 weeks-ish, maybe March 10th-ish.
Okay.
After we've gotten some FaceTime at KubeCon or something.
Yep. Okay.
Bob or Joe, are you guys paying attention? Any thoughts from your ends? Okay.
Well, we are out of time. We can pick this up more unless somebody has burning desire to tell us more. All right. Apologies if I cut someone off. Two things of note: Google Summer of Code participation. If we as a Kubernetes project community, etc., want to be considered for Google Summer of Code, we need to know who mentors are, and we need to know today, tomorrow at the latest. I sent a note to the dev list. Second thing is March 10th is actually KubeCon, so we have to decide probably next week if we are going to have a meeting, a community hangout that day or not. So things for later. All right, I will see you all in a week or on the internet.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.